Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North American Unitarian Association's March service. The North American Unitarian Association is a member service organization dedicated to supporting and promoting the practice of liberal religion by embracing freedom, reason, and tolerance, rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every person and all peoples. We have a very full service this morning, so I'm going to try to be brief with the announcements. You can find information about NAUA and upcoming events on our website, naunitarians.org, on our Facebook page, just Google NAUA Facebook, and in our biweekly newsletter, The Compass. If you're a member of NAUA, you should be getting The Compass automatically twice a month. If you're not getting it, or if you aren't a member, you can download issues from our website under the Communications tab. So there's a few new things happening, and I will highlight a couple of those. About circles, our best way of getting to know each other. One of our existing circles has openings for 2 members. They call themselves the SAT Chat group, and they meet on the second and fourth Saturday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And they're open for 3 or 4 new members at least. Some new circles are going to be starting up this spring. On May 4th, I'm going to be leading a circle called Photography as a Spiritual Practice. We'll begin meeting on May 4th. It'll be for folks who love expressive photography and who find the process of making photographs as a meaningful activity in itself. Through our lenses, photographers can enter moments of contemplation, flow, and a greater sense of presence in the world around them. This circle will meet monthly on first Mondays at 4 o'clock Pacific. You will need to register, and I'll give you that information in a second. On May 10th, a new discourse circle will begin. This circle is designed to encourage honest, thoughtful communication, even when it's difficult. In this topic-based group, we will explore how to disagree agreeably. This circle will meet monthly on second Saturdays at 4 o'clock Pacific time. Also, a Joys and Sorrows circle will begin this spring. This will be a drop-in circle for folks who want to share a joy or a concern, a moment of gratitude or a sorrow from their lives. Sharing is optional. Coming and listening is just as meaningful a way to participate. No registration is required for this one. It will meet monthly on fourth Sundays at 4 o'clock Pacific. To register for these or to find out more information, email circles@naunitarians.org. Also, most of you probably know by now that we have formed a task force to draft a set of proposed principles with the intention of presenting them for a vote at this fall's summit. A survey has been sent out asking for our ideas about developing our own formalized principles. If you haven't responded to the survey, or if you didn't get one, please grab the current compass and click on the survey link at the bottom of the article. The task force is requesting that all responses be sent in no later than Wednesday, March 25. That's this coming Wednesday. The International Association for Religious Freedom is running a series of lectures, I guess, on human consciousness. NAUA is a member of the IARF, and so we are able to join in on those lectures. Our own Mark Reimers has been leading the series. There will be 4 sessions exploring various aspects of human consciousness. The first 2 sessions are over, but they have been recorded, and those recordings are available. You can find the links in the current issue of The Compass. The 3rd session will be on April 4th, followed by the 4th and last session in May. The NAUA Academy is going to be running a new session on April 14th from 4:30 to 6 Pacific on social and spiritual impacts of AI chatbots. I know many of us are very interested in this topic. We'll be discussing the potential impacts of generative AI on our society over the next few years. What changes might we expect in how we work, in our relationships, and in our states of mind? Again, please see the compass to register. All right, that's it for announcements. Our service today is brought to us by the Reverends Jerry Kerr and his wife Lynn. They are co-ministers of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the proud city of Flint, Michigan, which is one of our member congregations. We're going to learn how going YouTube turned them and their whole congregation into a crew of counterculture messengers on the vast internet ocean in this era of censorship within UUism. All right, let's begin.
At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Here comes the flame.
And now, Lynn, it's time for the opening words.
Okay. Well, good morning, and or for some of us, it's a good afternoon. A new day needs to be honored. People have always known that. Didn't they chant at dawn in the sun temples of Peru, and leap and sway to Aztec flutes in Mexico, and drum sunrise songs in the Congo? So let us chant and sway and drum as well.
And now, Jerry, Time for the meditation and the reading.
Our words for meditation today are from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. I am of the old and of the young, of the foolish as much as the wise, regardless of others, ever regardful of others, maternal as well as paternal, a child as well as an adult, stuffed with the stuff that is coarse and stuffed with the stuff that is fine, a learner with the simplest, a teacher of the thoughtfulest, a novice beginning, yet experient of myriads of seasons. Of every hue and caste am I, of every rank and religion, a farmer, mechanic, artist, gentle person, sailor, Quaker, prisoner, rowdy, lawyer, physician, priest. I resist anything better than my own diversity. I breathe the air, but leave plenty after me. Amen and blessed be.
Our reading this morning is from a book entitled The Ship That Rocked the World by Tom Lodge. It was the beginnings of the free speech movement known as pirate radio in the United Kingdom. It was time for a pint on this damp, dull London day. Of course, in March of 1964, the rest of England was also damp and dull. It was a society filled with stiff and snobby adults who spurned rock and roll, a society where short hair was mandatory. The class structure of a society that was thousands of years ingrained, and it prevented the young people of the working class from moving out of their social prisons. It also kept the youth of the upper class from letting loose and having fun. Another barrier was the regulatory system that only permitted the government-owned BBC radio to broadcast in England. Working together, these forces were strangling a nation of 50 million people. I dropped into a pub on the King's Road, and as I entered, I squinted in its low lights and smoke-filled air. The radio behind the bar played some BBC light program music, the sound of which made me shudder. It was What Did Delaware by Perry Como. What did Delaware? What did Delaware? I took off my wet coat and walked up to the bartender, wiping down the bar. That's pretty awful music, I said. So, said the bartender, that's the best we got. A young fella sitting at the bar next to me piped up with an Irish accent. Don't you be worrying. We'll soon be putting out the finest rock and roll, and you can say goodbye to that stuff. How's that? I asked. He said, we got a ship off the coast about 3 miles out in international waters, and in a few days, we'll be on the air. Yeah, I said, that's great. Then I heard myself ask him, do you need any more DJs? You're on radio, he said, obviously shocked at the coincidence. I quickly told him that I freelance for the Canadian Broadcast Company, but that I'd rather be DJ and playing rock and roll music. Well, that's real good, he said. When can you start? Whenever you want, I said, concealing my excitement very poorly, I'm sure. I extended my hand for him to shake. The name's Tom Lodge. Good, good, he said, taking my hand in a firm grip. And with Perry Como still singing in the background, I called to say Hawaii, Hawaii. She called to say Hawaii. He proudly announced, I'm Ronan, Ronan O'Rahilly. And we'll share our slides here then. The members of a church and their minister do funny things when they are told they can't meet as a group. I'm talking about the time of COVID, of course. Here's funny thing number one. They're on the left of your screen. Lynn and I took a cardboard box, spray painted it black inside to cut down on reflections, set a laptop inside of it. You can see it there on the right of that picture. And then we played a UU history PowerPoint, what else, and shot it with the church's Android camera while we did the voiceovers for our Zoom production in that first few days of the COVID epidemic. We were careful, of course, not to scratch the top of the piano bench. But this table on top of a bench, on top of another table, was a very important part of funny thing, number one, to get on the air. In the middle picture, you'll see what we called the big stack of hymn books variation. I'm sure that was terrible. No doubt this made some people laugh out loud. And finally, there was variation number three, funny thing number three. There on your right, it was rip our living room apart approach, complete with tables stacked on top of tables, and of course, tall stacks of books. You may remember Saturday Night Live did a skit about the funny things that churches did at this time. They probably saw our own Flint Sunday Zoom services. And it was because of these funny things that there was a meeting at Flint that was very much like this one. This is the archetypal, I know, will put on a show. It happens a lot when times are hard. In the middle is our David Mickey Rooney Clement saying, I know where I can get some cameras. And on the left is Judy Garland Kinsey, Sue Kinsey from our church saying, and I'll run those darn cameras. And I'm not exaggerating a bit. Looking back, it feels like it was a movie about a bunch of idealistic kids out to conquer a problem. Now, you see the guy frowning in the back. That's me thinking, what could possibly go wrong? But I tell you, everyone else seemed fearless, and Lynn and I were tired of tearing up our living room, so we all did it. We had 28 YouTube subscribers in September of 2020, and now we have 299. 299. The Lansing, Michigan UU Church has 470, but they are 4 times our size in a city of 40,000 more people. So we aren't doing too bad. In looking back on this, it occurs to me that we had a lot of nerve going on YouTube. Our message is not what you would call mainstream or even mainstream liberal, because some of it points out that some modern liberal thinking seems very illiberal. That probably sounds very familiar to some of this audience. I think it's fair to say that when we decided to put on a show by deciding to go to YouTube, it was in a way an act of piracy. And not so unlike the early days of pirate radio off the coast of the United Kingdom. Pirate radio was deeply tied to anti-establishment movements, civil rights, anti-war protests, sexual liberation, and racial justice. That sounds a bit like our UU ship, and especially the NAUA UU ships. So perhaps you've never thought of yourself as a kind of a pirate. Well, what's the fun of that? Let's have some fun, and I promise I won't talk like a pirate, no matter how tempting. And boy, it is for me, and some of us, I know, feel the same way about talking like a pirate. It was 1964, and a rebellious group of people started broadcasting music that the authorities found too risque in England. They were off the coast of England in a ship, and then later ships. They thought the music, some in England thought the music was too progressive, too foreign. In those days, the British Broadcast Corporation, the BBC, and many politicians said the airways belonged to the people, so the government should protect those people by controlling its programming. So the BBC got to choose which record companies and artists they would favor. Soul and blues music and any other music of black cultures of any kind got little, if any, airplay. Enter an Irish guy, Ronan O'Rahilly, who was promising a singer, Georgie Fame. He was going to make Georgie Fame famous, he said. Ronan, at his own expense, had Georgie Fame make a record. he was with the Animals, and Ronan, who had helped Eric Burden and the Animals, Ronan had also helped Eric Burden and the Animals get started. And he hand carried this vinyl record of Georgie fame right to the BBC main office. Surely they would play it. But the BBC wouldn't play it because it wasn't produced by Decca or EMI. That's when Ronan, who bragged about being expelled 7 times from school, went out and bought a ship and put a big antenna on top of it. This is another lesson in the category of, if you're in power and you want to keep that power, be careful of who you piss off. Or put more politely, we all need to examine where we dig in and ask, what change am I unreasonably afraid of? What will history prove was the right thing to do? It all sounds so silly now. Ronan's Radio Caroline just played songs like the Rolling Stones' 1967 hit, Let's Spend the Night Together. It was censored, even though ever since humans learned to speak, they have been saying in one way or another, let's spend the night together. But powerful people said not, while the masses and the so-called pirates of the radio airwaves said, why not? The message in their music was not scandalous, just honest and off the cuff. And yes, honesty can seem scandalous at times, for those not ready to hear it, that is. But before I try to describe our own scandalous counterculture honesty, a word is necessary about the people on our ship. It is sometimes tempting to wish it were so, but this is not Lynn and me, Errol Flynn and Maureen O'Hara. Lynn doesn't even own a saber, except figuratively, of course, and it's pretty sharp, but we won't go into that right now. But in a UU congregation, there is no captain. Other churches have ministers, by whatever name, who indeed get the captain treatment. But the Unitarian Universalist tradition took the Reformation's belief in the priesthood of all believers all the way. So what is a UU minister in our Pirates of the YouTube metaphor? During our Puritan beginnings in America, the minister became a teacher, a speaker for the tradition. The minister was not an intermediary between the people and God. Nothing of the kind. The people of the church divine the will of God too. And so the principles of democracy, voting, and free speech are welded into our faith and are inextricable. Our fifth principle, honoring the democratic process, is not a political stance. It's a theological statement. And guess what? And thank the gods and goddesses for the health of this extended pirate metaphor that at least I'm enjoying. The standard pirate ship was very much a democracy too. The captain served at the pleasure of the crew. Captains were chosen by vote and could be removed by a majority decision if they abused power or showed cowardice. There were checks and balances. The quartermaster represented crew interests and oversaw the discipline and the distribution of loot. Every crew member had a say in major decisions, where to attack, whether to attack, and where to sail. Most pirates were escapees from the harsh, very undemocratic navies of the world. So they demanded respect in return for their very dangerous work. So, to any recent escapees from the harsh doctrinal ships of other faiths, we say, welcome aboard. Pirate radio DJ Tom Lodge remembers the day in 1964 when the British Navy came after them The Radio Caroline fired back with rock and roll. For no particular reason, I glanced out the porthole that day. Imagine my surprise when I noticed what looked to be like the entire British fleet heading right towards it for us. I jumped up and stuck my head out of the porthole to get a better view. I was scared now. They were coming to sink the Radio Caroline, I thought. Every ship was flying the Union Jack, and their bows were sharp, headed directly at us. Their guns pointed in our direction. Quick, Dave, look out the porthole. Why? Dave peered through the porthole. Hey, that's something. They're heading right for us. It's the British Royal Navy, I said. That's a drag. What are we going to do? Here's what we do, I said. We'll talk about them on air, okay? That'll make their actions public immediately. If they step out of line, the public will hear about it on the radio right now at this moment. Dave started talking. This is Dave Lee Travis on Radio Caroline South. I don't know what's going on, but there's a large fleet of Royal Navy ships heading right towards us. Hey, you sailors out there, flash your lights if you can hear us. The next song is dedicated to you. It's the Rolling Stones with 19 Nervous Breakdown. We got binoculars and started reading the names of the ships. The Arrow, the Sheffield, the Hermes. Hello, HMS Invincible. If you're listening to us, flash your lights. They're still heading towards us. Dave kept broadcasting. Hello, you sailors. My next song is dedicated to the fleet of Her Majesty's Royal Navy, which is heading right at us. Wild Thing by the Trogs. I later learned that millions of our listeners were absorbed in the excitement. This was a true British drama on the high seas. It was another Spanish armada, but the ships were British, and our only weapon was our music. Then a strange thing happened. Suddenly, and without any signal, they turned 180 degrees and sailed away. Their radio shows were not polished, but they got fan mail by the sackful. Fans often gathered by hundreds on the dock when tenders brought the DJs ashore for breaks and supplies. But they lived on a cramped, uncomfortable ship. There was a 2-beer-a-day limit. Drunkenness was forbidden, and women, with which to spend the night together, were not allowed on board. Ronan knew his venture could not suffer any hint of scandal, so he ran a tight ship. He never got rich, just the opposite, actually. And the DJs, some of them were paid a stipend, but most of them just worked for room and board. Mainly, they all worked for the sheer fun of it. And that sounds like a lot like our volunteers in Flint. Our YouTube production crew there doesn't get paid much, you know. Actually, they get nothing but grief. But evidently, there's some thrill in being a YouTube pirate, sending our counterculture message over the internet. Yes, I'm trying to make it sound romantic so as to keep them on board. But I promised you some of our own scandalous counterculture honesty worthy of free speech pirates. Such speech is usually born when pretty much everyone in the church agrees that things are going, frankly speaking, to hell. It is then that the church spokespersons, who bear only a little resemblance to Errol Flynn or Maureen O'Hara, it is then that the speakers, the preachers, are expected to address the obvious problem. A minister who doesn't try to the best of their ability to divine the cause of the problem, as informed by their centuries-old tradition, minus their own ego, if they don't try, they're like leaders who offer only thoughts and prayers after each school shooting. Not worth much. In the very recent past, one of our nation's many urgent concerns was the assassination of conservative opinion leader Charlie Kirk and its fallout. It had many of us thinking, agonizing over the definition of free speech and over the violent speech and actions overtaking our nation. President Trump's FCC chairman said it's okay to censor, even fire people who criticize the president and Charlie Kirk. And you may remember for a while it was goodbye to comedian Jimmy Kimmel. Censorship, plain and simple. Most of it associated with conservative totalitarian governments who overtly censor the news or the people's will. Right now, for instance, a dozen red and purple states are trying to make lawmaking through ballot initiatives a thing of the past. That's censorship. But sadly, when it comes to silencing, liberal people do it too. And to say otherwise isn't the subversive action we need to address. To address the problem of censorship. Sometimes illiberal liberal people do it as well. Ronan O'Rahilly's pirate radio battled England's left-leaning Labour Party that controlled the airwaves supposedly for the moral good of the masses. Liberals and conservatives often take turns restricting freedom of speech, and it's happening right now in our own country. On the day after Kirk's assassination, Professor Charles H.F. Davis of the University of Michigan spoke about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Davis is an assistant professor at Ann Arbor University of Michigan who focuses on race and racism. And he said of the murder of Kirk, even if you believe violence isn't an answer, it is a solution. Let me read that again. Davis said, even if you believe violence isn't an answer, it is a solution. A solution to violent rhetoric spewed by empowered people. Davis later said on social media that Charlie Kirk is a reminder of two things. Your words don't skip consequences, they just collect interest. He also said, empathy has boundaries. His rhetoric is the unmistakable language of neo-Marxism that looks for the presumed class of the presumed oppressor, the color of their skin, their socioeconomic standing, and then denounces the entire class or race of the so-called oppressor, with no regard for what is in the hearts and the minds of the individuals in that group. Neither are members of the group, now identified as entirely evil, allowed the right of free speech. According to the principles of Marxism that rules much of America's anti-racism work today, the end justifies the means. That's one of the cardinal rules of Marxism. And violence, well, as Professor Davis said, violence is condoned as a solution. After the professor's social media posts were circulated, some were outraged and called for his termination. The U of M said he had the right to speak, of course, and I believe that he did too. So did Charlie Kirk. And predictably, you will find no mention of Professor Davis's words supporting violence on any news station that independent media analysts would define as left-leaning. Our own state's NPR stations didn't mention it, even though it happened literally in their own front yard. Neither was it aired on CNN. Otherwise, it was national news. For myself, it is painful to think that I now have to listen to NPR, CNN, Huffington Post, then Fox News, MSN, and even Newsmax and they then divide by 6, average it all out to learn what's happening in the world. I would suggest everyone try that now and then. It can be painful, but at the end, if you do it for several months, you'll find out that you're not hearing things on some of your favorite news stations. What is happening in the world is an increase in faith in violence. According to the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, 34% of students believe it's okay to use violence to stop a campus speech that they don't want to hear. That's way up from when the study was first done in 5 years. A recent report aired on NPR tells us that a majority of Americans don't think violence is acceptable unless the other guy starts it. Then it's okay. I don't remember hearing that sentiment coming from any of the great souls we study and revere in this church. But that's enough scandalous speech for now. It's best doled out in small bites, as it can be hard to digest. But I truly believe that if pointing out the shortcomings of our own liberal culture carefully, according to the long-honored and well-tested values of our tradition, if that qualifies as piracy on the YouTube ocean, then I, for one, say, weigh anchor. It isn't easy for a church to be a renegade. It certainly wasn't easy for Radio Caroline to fight for the free speech that, in their case, was music and its message, a message they felt people deserved to hear. In just a few short years, their audience dwarfed that of the BBC. But in late 1967, the British Parliament made it illegal for anyone to help them. No one would dare bring supplies to their ship. The other ships in the now growing pirate radio flotilla, competing with Ronan, quickly gave in. But Ronan and his faithful crew refused to submit, even in the face of possible arrest and 2 years in prison. They held out for 6 more months. But then in March 1968, both of their ships were boarded in the early morning hours. The crystals removed from their transmitters, and the ships towed away and impounded. But it didn't really matter. They had already won using their weaponized rock and roll. In an obvious surrender to Ronan O'Rahilly and his fellow pirates, the BBC had just started what they called Radio 1. BBC Radio 1 played pop and rock exclusively. The BBC was also smart enough to hire many of the Radio Caroline DJs, including Tom Lodge. They, ironically enough, wanted the outlaw mystique of those DJs attached to the BBC. Oh, Ronan definitely won. History proved them right. The lesson is obvious, I suppose: to speak, to broadcast, to stream what you know people need and have a right to hear, even and perhaps especially if some find the truth to be scandalous. That is always the right thing to do. If you haven't watched one of our Flint UU services on YouTube, you can do that any Sunday at 10:30 or anytime at our YouTube page. We keep all of our recordings there, of course. And you will find our recordings, our broadcasts, no longer look so funny. In fact, we are looking too professional, I think. And I think we need to tone that down a little bit. We want to look a little rough, unpolished, like pirates. Amen. And thank you for being with us today.
Okay, as I extinguish this flame, may we remember the light we need is already within us and within one another.